Hello, Glenn Parker from High Vibration Foundation. I wanted to do a bit on indigo children. There's a test, like a 25-word question to go through, and I've heard other people do this and run down the list. I'm like, the first time I've heard it, I'm like, I thought I was too early, 1968, to be indigo, but that was right on the cusp. I think it was by a couple years, or maybe that year itself, I don't know. If anybody knows, let me know. As far as to be an indigo, so I guess I was a very early indigo, because once you hear this, it sounds like whoa. So I'm going to read these off the screen. So if this is a little, looking back and forth, that's why. Are you intelligent, though may not have had top grades? Yeah. I lost my right eye to a rare cancer when I was 18 months old. So in the 70s, they really didn't know how to teach you when you had like a dyslexia or an aphasia, because this side of this eye is feeding the side of the brain with words and symbology. So I'm reading something, and it says see Jane come, and I'm like, or whatever, and I'm transposing words. I'm saying a different word, even though I understand that word, and they're yelling at me, why are you saying a different word? I'm like, I'm not, and you don't even know that you're doing it. So but I ended up doing a lot of other things and presenting a lot of other skills, people skills and other things that presented a lot of intelligence. So I was always perplexing, and it was me that made teachers angry. Number 2, are you very creative and enjoy making things? Yeah, I always did. I actually used to take things apart, electronic things. I took my toothbrush apart when I was a kid, and I hooked up a solar panel to it, and I did all these things, and I always had these ideas of geometry and stuff in my head for energy, which come to find out are toroidal energy symbologies and pyramidal types of structures that are being used nowadays for types of free energy projects and solar energy, inline solar energy panels, which make substantial more power than like a singular. And they're in line in such a way that the energy cycles in a toroidal way, which is basically what you are physically, from your heart center. You make a toroidal energy, diamolite energy body, something to that effect, out from your body. And so does the earth and every living creature, basically, from a heart center. So I always thought that was interesting. And, I like photography. I just picked up a camera when I was a kid. Like one of those little 110s, and was always taking pictures, and have pictures now. I'm going to turn that off right now. Apologize for that. So moving on, always need to know why, especially when you're being asked to do something. Oh yeah. It wasn't really a challenge, I don't think, as far as challenging people, but I'm like, why? Why do we have to do it that way? Because that's the way it's done. I'm like, well, why? It's like, well, I don't want to do it that way. It's easier and faster to do it this way. Well, then you need to learn how to do it. If I can do it the other way, I still know how to do it. Just because I don't know how to do it your way, which is the ineffectual way. Teachers obviously don't like stuff like that, nor do other authority figures that have, that are in a younger energy. There's some words and symbologies that go for energies that are not indigo and crystal children, to represent the energy state of when they were born, and I'm not quite familiar with them, so I'm not gonna try to say them. But and this was really weird, but in our school we had for a while a principal that was an ex-drill sergeant, or even maybe higher than that, because he would yell at the kids and say, "Hey man, come over here." I'm like, yeah, it's nice. It's not a military school. It's a regular old elementary school, regular old neighborhood. In any case, he really had a problem when somebody didn't like authority would say things to him. I know one time I had a note to go down the street and eat like a Taco Bell or something like that. Hey, it's a kid, 70s, and permission like for that day, 'cause she didn't have time to make lunch or whatnot. She gave me $1, and I said, go down to Taco Bell. And I actually had that piece of paper. And I got caught coming back from Taco Bell. I went to the principal's office, and I presented him the note saying I have permission from the person that's kind of in charge of me to go and do that. Otherwise, I don't want to go and have what you were having today, because I'm, don't feel good after one of the things that you served me. At least Taco Bell I know sits. And I got punished, and I had to write out 100 whatever words, I won't go do this, or whatever it was at the time. Next question. Had disgust or perhaps loathing for such of the required repetitious work in school? Oh, yeah, like writing 100 words that I won't go do this when I already had permission to do this. Yeah, it was quite boring, you know, it was very linear. It was, you know, I was gifted with a photographic memory. This is what I wanted to experience in this lifetime, so they're drudging over all these materials over and over again. I'm like, well, we've already done that, and what's the difficulty here? What's going on? So yeah, so that's yes to every question so far. Were rebellious in school in that they refused to do homework or rejected authority of teachers or seriously wanted to rebel but didn't care, usually due to parental pressure. Yeah, you know, parents, they weren't too bad. They were, you know, they knew there were challenges, you know, with the vision and stuff like that for education. And but you know, the teachers and whatnot had very good people skills. I think they were developed because of those limitations for the reading and things like that. Where I only remember in like 8th grade or something having to do homework once, doing a book report or something, and then I mostly winged it because it was a verbal in front of the class. But quite honestly, I don't recall doing any other homework. I would just do it in class. Like, it's done. But yeah, you know, I just would refuse. I'm like, either fail me or, you know, so I don't think you want to see me here again next year. So I think I figured out leverage pretty early on as well. Intelligent enough to know when people didn't want to have a particular result. May have experience early existential depression and feelings of helplessness. Those may have ranged from sadness to utter despair, suicidal feelings, and while still in high school or younger, are not common in indigo children, or younger are not uncommon in indigo children. Oh yeah, there's plenty of that, you know, where, you know, it seems like the world is against you when everybody's not playing nice with you and everybody's yelling at you, or you're constantly pushing up against people. We're going to wait for a second for that noise to pass by. Happy people. It's good. Yeah, I had suicidal tendencies when I was a kid because, you know, the world is against you, and I did a couple pleas for help. I took a bunch of aspirin or something like that. I knew it wouldn't hurt me. I took it with milk. But just to show that they were missing, I could have just easily, I guess, flushed them down the toilet or whatever. But, you know, I was taking the doctors, and they're poking and prodding the brain and asking questions. They're like, no, there's really nothing wrong with this kid. I think I went to the psychologist once, and they checked, and they're like, there's nothing in there that's kind of, you know, it's just not happy with the situation at hand. So, yeah, I mean, it really does tweak kids when around every corner things are difficult and the world seems different to you. You're in a different energetic state from a lot of the other population, and not everybody gets you. Most people don't want to not conform. They want, you know, indigo children are like, well, I'm just going to do it my way, and whatever you want to say, whatever you want to go do, whatever test you want to give me, be my guest. Have difficulty in service-oriented jobs. Indigos resist authority and caste system of employment. Oh yeah. I worked for B. Dalton for a little while when I was a kid. I worked for the theater for a little while for a theater. And, you know, that hierarchical structure, and, you know, somebody's been here a couple months more than you, and I can respect that, but it doesn't particularly mean that I liked it. And nor have I ever liked it. Matter of fact, I started my first business when I was 12, you know, selling little weird things, or, you know, things that I didn't need anymore, old toys and stuff like that. Recapture some money, hey? To buy things that I wanted at the time. And then at 16, I started my first business, consulting business, with a high school teacher, computer consulting, because I did have a photographic memory, and I learned algebra in a couple of weeks. Just, you know, I was very sick, and I came back, and he gave me this book, and I took the book home, and the next thing you knew, I brought it back the next day. He said, well, you were going to work out of this book, and it happened to be the entire semester of algebra. And he's like, you didn't do that last night. I'm like, yeah, you said to go and do that last night. And misunderstanding, but it's done. Here it is. So we put equations on the board, linear equations, you know, x, y, and plotting and mapping and all this stuff. And put it on the chalkboard. It's okay. Well, then go do them, and it's done. And we're like, okay, well, here's the next book. Go ahead and do that. And you know, he was supportive more than most of the teachers. Moving on. Have difficulty. What next? Prefer leadership positions or working alone into team positions? Well, I think we already answered that in the last one. Having my own business and doing consulting and web design and search engine optimization and life coaching and photography and business consulting, being able to go and take apart a business and take apart all the numbers and what's being done and reassemble it. I do like that because I know if I don't want to work with that client, or if I want to work on my own time, or if I like to work at night or early in the morning, whatever, I can do that. So the answer to that question would be yes. And they're yes for all of them so far. Have deep empathy for others, not yet an intolerance for stupidity. Ooh, that's a big yes. You know, I understand that everybody's aspects of the infinite, of all that is, and everybody is sacred, but it doesn't mean you have to experience everybody if you don't want to. Obviously, everything is by agreement. It's happening to you, might not by you. Excuse me, so if you come across somebody that was an agreement, you're making them in your reality. There's only you in your reality, and you're doing everything by agreement and putting everybody in your reality. So it was something that you wanted to experience, that you had an agreement with. And coming to that understanding now, that's great, but then, yeah, you know, when you have a photographic memory and you can remember everything, and your life is like an entire book, and you can just turn to any page, any date, and it's like it was 2 seconds ago, tends to be annoying to a lot of people, freaks a lot of people out when you say, oh, you know, how are you doing on this? And you might not have seen them for years, and they mentioned it 5 years before, and they're like, well, how do you know that? I'm like, well, you told me. We talked about that 5 years ago, or whatever, and they're like, really? Freak! Can be extraordinarily emotional, sensitive, including crying at the drop of a hat. No, not shielding, or may be the opposite and show devoid of emotion, full shielding. Yeah, I've ranged those. Nowadays, I think it's more neutrality of the understanding. I know Adronis and other beings and Bashar have explained that beings on a higher vibrational state, they don't have an emotional connection to other beings. It's more neutrality. They have an understanding of how all it is operating and how things are working. But yeah, I mean, I still, obviously, if I see things that are way out of alignment, there are still times that, you know, it goes back and forth, but I recognize it for what it is. Maybe request some spirit guides and come back into alignment and go through it. But as a kid, definitely, you know, it was either one end or the other. Like, well, I think I was called Mr. Spock a couple times as a kid. Give you an idea that I could shut it off. May have trouble with rage. I think when I was younger, I didn't break or destroy or burn things or anything like that. But, you know, the frustration levels, you know, a little high as far as angry. So maybe rage, a little out of that spectrum. So maybe that's a maybe. So everything yes and one maybe. Had trouble with systems that they consider broken or ineffectual. Political, educational, medical, and legal. Yeah, I haven't. I've never watched the news, and you know, or I did when I was a kid. I was really young, but for the last 20 years, I haven't really cared. I pretty much ascribe to Timothy Ferris as 5-hour work week, the compressed amount of information that you need to know. If I need to know it, if somebody's passed away, like a celebrity, or something's in the news, as long as I'm still here and nothing's blown up, or there's not a flood, or something like that that's local that I need to know about, that I need to drive around, and then, you know, my phone tells me. I don't experience that. I don't really find it any need in the medical system and all that, but I've never really had much use for. Alienation or anger with politics, feeling your voice don't count, and or the outcome really doesn't matter. Yeah, that's basically, I think, why I tuned out at first. Or, you know, besides, it wasn't interesting either. It seemed like a broken system, so I never really had. And you fucking feel alienated toward that. So that's a strong yes. Or That's a yes, but not a strong one. Frustration or rejection of traditional American dreams, 9-to-5 career, marriage, the 2.5 children house, the white picket fence. Well, I had a house when I was 2021 I bought one. And let me tell you, the house owns you. You don't own the house. I mean, I think I spent every weekend doing something to that house and making it beautiful. And I was married at the time. And but as far as the children, though, when I was 20, I got fixed. I didn't want, might be too much information, but I just didn't really see any. I wanted to be a kid my whole life. I didn't want other children, and this rare cancer that I had. The reason that the eye had to be removed when I was a child at 18 months was very likely a genetic deficiency in the RB13 gene. The 13 gene monitors diabetes and a lot of other things as well are linked to it, but the ability for cell replication for cancer. And it was 50-50 chance that my kids would be born blind and so on and so forth, so I wasn't going to do that. Besides being, being married and having tons of sex, there was a high risk of having children at 20. That was out of the question as well. Anger at rights being taken away, fear or fury at Big Brother watching you. Yeah, I always knew, very familiar with computers. I could tell what was going on pretty early in the monitoring systems, and I was exposed to a lot of things that were happening on a higher level as far as, because I set up a lot of computer internet infrastructure back in the 90s, probably most of it, and you could see traffic and other things happening. Having a burning desire to do something to change and improve the world, may be stifled what to do, may have trouble identifying the path. Yeah, early on, that's it's difficult to find your path unless you find a niche of people that are indigos or open-minded people. And if you're not used to attracting that, if you're cut on those other cycles, that's really hard to do. Have psychic or spiritual interest appear fairly young in and before teen years. Yeah, I was pretty smart and I knew what was going on. Maybe I wasn't in the best neighborhood when I was growing up. So you have to be savvy and keep an eye out and look around corners and know that you need to walk home in a particular way, in a particular path, so that, they're not going to hurt you, but, at least some intimidation and be a pain in the ass. So the least path of resistance. And as far as psychic, I had lucid dreams when I was a kid. I had deja vu all the time, knowing things before they happen, which Bashar says is the experiencing the now, the one moment in creation, and the illusion of time breaking down into synchronicity is experiencing deja vu, where everything is happening at once. You're experiencing the past and the present and the now, which I found really interesting. Had few, if any, indigo role models. Having had some doesn't mean that you don't have an indigo, that you're not an indigo, though. Well, I didn't have any indigo role models, so so that one I don't think is applicable. Have strong intuition, random behavior pattern or mind style, symptoms of attention deficit disorder, may have trouble focusing on assigned tasks, may jump around in conversations. Yeah, all the time with the photographic memory, I can bounce around in discongruity very easily. I've done line production where you take scripts apart and you put them into production and shooting order, and then they go back and get re-edited into shooting order. So the congruity time has really never been the boss of me, if you want to call it that, where I could do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and jump around. It was very confusing for most people, very frustrating for me, because there's really not that many people I could talk to. But yeah, I'll just say something out of the blue and people go, crazy. I'm like, no, just because I remember we had that conversation 10 years ago, or it correlates with something I've heard or seen on TV, and maybe I have a lot of British humor too, a lot of the intellectual dry type of humor, and a lot of people don't get that, so. But that question is applicable, so. Have had psychic experience, such as premonitions, seeing angels or ghosts, or out-of-body experiences, hearing voices. No voices, but when I was a kid, I saw like fairy types of little beings in my hallway, and I always had very, very bad dreams about like one of the rooms in the hallways, and that things coming to get me and take me in there at night. And when I was really young, And it was after that dream that things kind of calmed down. So whatever agreement I had with whatever types of beings that were doing whatever, looks like protectors or something like that. Ghosts, I think I saw something at one point in time, but those little fairy beings, I think I told my wife about that, and she was like, oh, really? Little fairy beings, huh? I was like, And that could freak her out for a little while, actually. Maybe electrically sensitive, such as watches not working. Yeah. I don't wear a watch or anything like that. My cell phone, I haven't hurt my cell phone ever, but definitely electrical sensitivity. I can't have my cell phone near me or on at night when I go to bed, or any electronic devices, really. Even clocks, ticking clocks, that's a different story altogether. The lights going out, moving under them, electronic equipment malfunctioning, and lights blowing out. No lights blowing out, but if I do focus, I can make things happen in electrical, in streams of electricity and stuff like that. I mean, I can't turn on a light bulb or anything like that. That would be cool. May have awareness of other dimensions and parallel realities. Not when I was young, but definitely now. I get the sense of the fourth dimensional stream of time now, where you can go through the fast forward button and look through a stream of time through a parallel dimensional vector and see if that's something that would be nice. And now it's more excitement, where excitement automatically directs those types of vectors to different times and spaces. But as a kid, obviously I would have to have some awareness of that to see other dimensional beings, like the protectors in the hallway and whatnot. Sexually are very expressive or inventive, yeah, very inventive, and may reject sexuality in boredom or in intention of achieving higher spiritual connection, and may explore alternate types of sexuality. Yeah, I mean, I like all kinds of things. I like role play and whatever, and I'm a swinger, so I mean, I do all kinds of very sexually open things with groups of other people and couples and stuff like that. I even got invitations when I was a kid to stuff like that, but I wasn't really into that when I was younger. Not a kid, but teenager, high school. I wish I had done that, actually. But I'm highly creative, and the Tantra was more, instead of rejecting it, I went more the Tantra route, and more of the deeper connection between the two beings, and experiencing the longer orgasms and the more the spiritual mental orgasms between the two. Seek meaning to their life and understand about the world, may seek this through religion or spirituality, spiritual groups and books, and self-help books, groups and books. Yes, I've always done that, I think, since about age 25. But not when I was a kid. But that's always been of interest. Tantra was always of interest, and that was more, instead of just, spank me daddy, it was more of, something that was beautiful between two people, and a more shared experience. And it wasn't about the release of orgasm energy, it was about building energy and building spiritual energy. When they find a balance, they become very strong, healthy, and happy individuals. Yeah, I was sick for a very long time, and there was a lot of imbalance in my life, sexually, monetarily, and I made a lot of challenges for myself. I earned a lot of money, and I became very sick, and I was sick for a very, very long time, for years, and over a decade, almost dying hundreds of times from a rare disorder. And so, yeah, definitely. But now I'm happy and strong, and all is well in the world, and synchronicity is abounding more and more. As you go through your highest excitement, synchronicity will abound. So when you feel that line of energy, follow it as much as you can. So that's all 25 questions. I think that all of them were yes. There's one, maybe a couple, there's one that wasn't applicable. So I guess if you want to score that like you would a test, is probably like an 85 to 90%. So I would say yes, Indigo. Yay. I've never actually broken it down so detailed before. I've read through the questions, but so that was nice. If you have any questions, or I'm going to put the link to this in IN5D, great site. Check that out as well. Like them on Facebook. Lots of information there as well. I have the foundation page down below as well. Check that out. Different information there, more videos. If you have any questions, send me an email if you want to know about any resources as well. Love and light.